Okay, it is 7 o'clock, so I will get us started. Good evening, everyone. I will call our regular city council meeting to order of September 14th, 2021, being held in the Richfield Municipal Center. The first item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If everyone could please stand and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item is the open forum. Is anybody here in person to speak at the open forum? Okay, and then I will go to Executive Analyst Wynn to let people know how they can participate in the open forum, and then to let us know if anyone is on the phone for the open forum.
Thank you, Mayor. We always encourage residents to attend our meetings in person to make their comments to council. You can also participate by calling in. You can dial 612-861-0651, and you'll be patched through live to the meeting to make your comments. You can also provide your comments to myself at 612-861-9711 prior to the meetings, and we can have a staff member read them. You can also email your comments to kwynn@richfieldmn.gov prior to the meeting, and a staff member can read your comments. I currently do not have anybody on the line.
Okay, I'll wait for a little bit longer to see if anyone calls or shows up. Anyone else on the line? Executive Analyst Wynn?
I do not have any callers.
All right, seeing as we have nobody here for the forum, we will close the forum and I will move to the next item, which is the approval of the minutes of the City Council work session of August 10th, 2021, the City Council meeting of August 10th, 2021, the City Council work session of August 24th, 2021, and the Special Council meeting of August 24th, 2021.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Supple, second.
The minutes have been moved by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Supple. Any comments or questions on the minutes? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes have been approved. The next item, we have two presentations, and I'm just going to stay here and read them. We do not have anybody for these proclamations. And the first proclamation, I think they're both with the Human Rights Commission. So the first proclamation recognizes Hispanic Heritage Month. So I will read it here. Whereas Hispanic Heritage Month from September 15th through October 15th pays tribute to the Hispanic and Latino Americans, the largest ethnic minority group in the United States of America, for their contributions to the United States of America, and to celebrate the culture and history of these groups. And whereas Hispanic Heritage Month begins each year on September 15th, the anniversary of the independence of 5 Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. Mexico celebrates its independence on September 16th, and Chile celebrates its independence on September 18th. Whereas nearly 18% of the population in Richfield is Hispanic or Latino, of Latino origin, according to the 2019 estimates and by the U.S. Census Bureau. And I'll just add 40% of our students in Richfield. Whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans have sought for and struggled to make the United States of America their home while enduring discrimination and oppression from those who attempted to quash their dreams for better lives themselves and for their families. Whereas Hispanic and Latino Americans have brought with them their determination, hard work, and talents, which have enriched the lives of all people of the United States of America. And whereas the Human Rights Commission supports this proclamation at its August 5th, 2021 meeting, and recommend the City Council do the same. Now, therefore, I, Maria Regan Gonzalez, Mayor of Richfield, on behalf of the City of Richfield, do hereby proclaim September 15th to October 15th as Hispanic Heritage Month in the City of Richfield, and call on the people of Richfield to observe this month with appropriate programs, activities, and ceremonies, and continue to honor the contributions of Hispanic and Latino Americans throughout the year. Proclaimed this 14th day of September 2021. And then we have a second proclamation recognizing Constitution Week. Whereas September 17th, 2021 marks the 234th anniversary of the drafting of the Constitution of the United States of America by the Constitutional Convention, and whereas it is fitting and proper to accord official recognition to this magnificent document as on its memorable anniversary, and to the patriotic celebrations which will commemorate the occasion. Whereas Public Law 915 guarantees the issuing of the proclamation each year by the President of the United States of America, designating September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week. Now, therefore, I, Maria Regan Gonzalez, Mayor of Richfield, on behalf of the Richfield City Council, do hereby proclaim the week of September 17th through the 23rd as Constitution Week, and ask our citizens to reaffirm the ideals of the framers of the Constitution, the ideals that the framers of the Constitution had in 1787 by vigilantly protecting the freedoms guaranteed to us through the guardianship of our liberties, remembering that lost rights may never be regained. Proclaimed on this 14th day of September 2021. So those are the two proclamations that we have, and we will hand these to the Human Rights Commission members at a later date. Any comments from council members on the proclamations and presentations? No. Councilmember Troutman.
I just thank the Human Rights Commission for putting these proclamations together, and as a Hispanic person and a big fan of the Constitution, I appreciate both of them. And I think appreciate what our mayor mentioned, which is that as there's we have a really diverse city, but our children actually reflect that diversity and that plurality of kids from all around the world that make Richfield home. And I love our city now, and I'm really excited about what our city will become tomorrow.
Absolutely. Any other comments from folks? All right, I will move to the next item. And before I do so, I think there's an update on the agenda from City Manager Rodriguez.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Sorry, it's very loud. We noticed 2 public hearings for tonight's agenda, and we ended up pulling those items. We pulled them for separate reasons. One was the interim use permit request from RB Honda. We pulled that because they have withdrawn the request. And then the second thing was a public hearing for the authorization of future street reconstruction bonds for 65th Street. And we pulled that because we're still working on the details, but we will reschedule that item. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And that is reflected in the agenda that is up here tonight. So thank you for that change. The next item is the approval of the agenda.
Supple, I'll move approval of the agenda.
I'll second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple to move the agenda and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. Any questions on the modifications or on the approval of the agenda? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The agenda has been approved. The next item is the consent calendar, which goes back to City Manager Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent calendar contains several separate items which are acted upon by the City Council in one motion. Once the consent calendar has been approved, the individual items and recommended actions have also been approved. No further council action on these items is necessary. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, consider approval of the 2021-2022 Emergency Preparedness Agreement with the City of Bloomington using Public Health Emergency Preparedness Grant funds distributed by a federal grant from the Centers for Disease Control to provide services in the area of public health emergency preparedness, bioterrorism, and the development of a response system. Item B, consider the appointment of youth members to city advisory board commissions. Item C, consider a new taxi cab license for Twin Cities Taxi Cab Incorporated, a business run under the LLC name Twin Cities Taxi Cab and Services Incorporated. Item D, consider a resolution extending a citywide moratorium on the establishment of any new commercial use involving firearms for an additional 6 months. Item E, consider the adoption of a resolution supporting a Livable Communities Demonstration Act grant application to the Metropolitan Council for the proposed Minnesota Independence College and Community Development at 2000 76th Street West. And there was a typo on that originally in the agenda. It was in the critical timing issues text that has now been corrected, and the correction would read, does read, the grant application is due September 27, 2021. And then finally, I'm sorry, there's 2 more items. Item F, consider the approval of a resolution requesting a MnDOT state aid design element variance for the 65th Street reconstruction project. And then item G, consider a resolution approving laws of Minnesota 2021, first special session, chapter 14, article 9, section 5, relating to temporary transfer of tax increment for housing development purposes. And I present these items for your consideration as part of the consent calendar.
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second.
The consent calendar, the motion has been made to move the consent calendar by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Troutman. Any comments or questions on items in the consent calendar? Councilmember Supple.
I was just pleased to see that we had some youth members, and I know that they've been very active on the Arts Commission, even pending their appointment. They've already been up and running and doing things. And I would encourage anybody that's listening out there, we have a lot of other openings on our other commissions, and we'd love to have the youth join us. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councilmember Whalen.
Just want to not pass up the opportunity with the last item on the list to just thank everyone who was involved in the talking with state legislators, the state legislators themselves who did create this flexibility around some of our housing funding. And I know we're still, as a city, and I think largely will be with the HRA, but still figuring out exactly what that will be used for and what it makes possible, but I know it frees up some real opportunities, so I'm excited about that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
It's not terribly important, but I just wanted to call out the 65th Street design variance. I'm certainly in support of it, but it is just wild to look at the map and see that, like, absent a variance, you literally have to demolish the post office to make the road fit. So I'm certainly glad our staff are crossing our T's and dotting our I's, but it's just like, it's kind of shocking that that's the default outcome of the process, requires such an extreme thing. Well, it requires an exception to build it the way it already is, but obviously glad it's happening.
Other comments or questions? Okay, the motions have been made. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the consent calendar has been approved. The next item goes to Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to consider the second reading of an ordinance repealing and replacing Section 601 of the Richfield Code of Ordinances pertaining to solid waste disposal, collection, and hauling. The section of code has not been thoroughly revised in many years, if at all, and needed significant revisions to bring it up to date and in alignment with the city's new organized collection system. Staff determined that repealing the whole section and rewriting it was the best course of action. The section sets requirements for residents, businesses, waste haulers, and others regarding the proper storage, disposal, and collection of solid waste. This is our second reading. I don't know if staff has, no, okay. We talked a bit at the first reading, just for anyone listening who's curious about this. This is not the new organized hauling system. That was approved, the contract for that was approved back in June. This is a more routine matter, but the details are in the full agenda if you're curious. So I would then make the motion to approve the second reading of an ordinance repealing and replacing Section 601 of the Richfield City Code pertaining to solid waste disposal, collection, and hauling.
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Any comments or questions on the item? No? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes.
Madam Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
if I could
Sorry
also
about that.
get a motion authorizing the execution of the resolution, that would be great.
Yes, sorry, you gave me this ahead of time and I forgot.
Thank you.
So since we already passed the first section, I would then also move to authorize preparation and execution of a resolution providing for summary publication of the ordinance.
Thank you.
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Whalen and seconded by Councilmember Supple. Any comments or questions on that addition? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The motion is passed. Thank you, Attorney Tejan. The next item goes to Councilmember Supple.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item is to consider adoption of a resolution designating the city's contribution towards health, dental, term life, and disability insurance premiums for 2022 for general services and management. The city contributes to the cost of premiums for 4 kinds of insurance coverages available to city employees. The full-time employee contributions are discussed within the staff report, as well as contributions towards health insurance for part-time regular general service employees. The Local Government Information Systems Association, or LOGIS group, changed insurance carriers in 2017 to Health Partners Health Insurance. As part of the 5-year contract, rate banding was introduced, along with rate caps for each of the contract years. After an RFP process through Logis, Health Partners will continue to provide RFP process through Logis. Health Partners will continue to provide insurance company for the city, and the City of Richfield's premium increases was solidified at 4%. The 2022 dental rates were kept at the same rate. The city self-insures its dental coverage. The city is part of the Logis Group for life insurance, and the entire group will see an increase for life insurance services through a new vendor following an RFP process, although a final contract has not yet been received. The city's current long-term disability provider, Madison National Aux Company, kept the rates the same for 2021 and 2022. All police, fire, and Local 49 bargaining unit members have not yet negotiated a 2022 contract, but have agreed in the past to adopt the same benefit plans offered to general services and management employees, and thus adopt a similar provision in their respective contracts. City Manager Rodriguez had stated earlier that she doesn't have anything else to add to the staff report, but would be happy to answer questions.
Any questions from council members? All right, no questions?
Well, then I will move to adopt a resolution designating the city's contribution towards health, dental, term life, and long-term disability insurance premiums for 2022 for general services and management employees.
I'll second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes. Thank you. The next item goes to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
Thank you. This is to consider a request for a waiver of application fees for an interim use permit. Residents Aaron Burbank and Joe Everett at 6915 Harriet Avenue are in the midst of a dispute with their neighbor and plan to apply for an interim use permit that would allow them to temporarily construct a fence taller than 6 feet to provide additional screening from the neighboring property. Land use applications require the payment of application fees intended to cover the approximate cost of processing the request. For example, legal publications, mailed notice, staff time, and attorney consultation. Ms. Burbank and Mr. Everett have submitted the attached request asking the council to waive application fees due to their particular circumstances. To staff's knowledge, such a waiver of application fees has never been granted by the council. City staff receive frequent requests to waive fees, assessments, etc. for a variety of reasons. The city provides many services without specific fees. In this case, the Environmental Health Division, Public Safety Department, Planning Division, and City Attorney's Office have dedicated a significant amount of time to the unfortunate situation between these two neighbors. A note, accounting of staff time expended thus far would be available upon request. If the council wishes to grant a waiver in this case, specific findings should be made to distinguish this case from others. Staff would then draft a resolution for consideration at the September 28th meeting. And they are recommending denial at this point. We also received a letter from the applicants, which we read in advance of this. And would we offer now if the applicant has more to say, or
What was that?
should we ask maybe council for questions? I'm wondering when I should ask the applicant if they would like to say anything.
You can go ahead and ask
Okay.
the applicant if they'd like.
Would
to
the
say
applicant like to say anything in addition to the letter, or just, if so, please come to the podium, sorry. Yep, just speak into the mic and say your name and, well,
Burbank. And I just wanted to thank you for already taking time to consider this, because I know I feel very annoying in everything I've had to do. But I feel like everything that we've done and all the avenues we've gone down haven't helped deter the situation at all, and it keeps escalating. And I don't know if having a higher fence or anything will stop her fully, but it will block her light, and it will keep her from kind of climbing over the fence into our yard. And I feel like I'll have to stop using the city resources and calling as much, because we're calling almost every week, and we should be calling every day, and we just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
So we have, on a side note, sent a cease and desist to get a harassment restraining order, and that's moving forward, but she's kind of doubled down since then, so it's already escalated. I don't know. Thank you.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Are there any additions that staff would like to add on the item?
No, there is a staff recommendation. The staff recommendation really isn't based on the merits for or against this particular interim use permit. It's more about having a rationale for waiving a fee that would then be precedential for future fees. And we weren't able to come up with a rationale that was very specific to this circumstance that, again, wouldn't be precedential in nature. But this is much more of a policy issue than a technical issue. So staff would be happy to implement whatever decision you were to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members before a vote on this? Councilmember Whalen.
I had asked this in advance, and so just more to confirm for the group. But there are certain like variances that come through planning, like land use type decisions, where there is a very specific list of criteria that a property or application has to meet in order to like receive a variance, and that, just to confirm, there's not any set of criteria like that when it comes to waiving fees.
Yeah, I think that the city attorney could elaborate. Not that I'm aware of, so yeah, I would just pass it along to city attorney Teachin.
Sure, Mayor and Council. This is a sort of a unique situation, and Councilmember Whalen is correct. There really aren't any criteria for this type of thing. This is really certainly the council has the inherent authority to waive the fee if it wishes to do that. I think the key would be to provide some specific reasons that you think maybe are unique to this situation, so that it wouldn't set a precedent for future requests. And so if that's your desire, you would just need to direct staff as to what you believe those unique reasons might be, so that so that staff could draft a resolution to that effect, just so that it's part of the record.
Councilmember Supple.
I would say that this does strike me as being unique in that it's been going on for over 5 months, almost 6 months now, and that Ms. Burbank and Mr. Everett have been following procedures that staff have asked them. And, you know, they've been calling the police and following through on things. So they've been cooperating. It's my understanding that this won't be dealt with in the courts until 2022. So if there's no way to expedite it, I do think it might be appropriate to waive the fee. That would be my feelings on the matter. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question from the applicants. You had mentioned that there was maybe a harassment restraining order that had been applied for, and I was because that should be, is that in place now, or has that been applied for? So, okay, and is that something that, because it sounds like certainly this conduct meets the definition of harassment, and you would be granted one. I would expect you'd be granted one pretty quickly. And may I?
Go ahead.
And part of what hurts my heart when I see this is that this is not the only instance in the last year where I've seen residents just begin engaging in conduct that, having lived here for decades, I think we just have to recognize that there's a shift in the level of conflict that we have, and it's not, unfortunately, unique to you. And one of the tools that can protect neighbors are harassment restraining orders. And so I think one of the questions that I have is there it seems like that would be the best tool if somebody's coming into your yard, that you would apply for a harassment restraining order, and the courts would actually tell your neighbor they're not, and then assuming that this is true, I just take you at your word, but that then both the city and you would have that legal protection, and that seems like a clearer, well-worn path than kind of creating a one-off waiver for a fence. It almost seems that would be less expensive too. So I was just curious why this and not the other, especially if you're talking to lawyers. Not that I want you to reveal their legal counsel, but probably.
If you could go to the microphone, thank you. Because we're recording it too, so the mic can pick it up better.
I maybe should have gone that way in the beginning, but we honestly thought that different routes would stop her. I thought talking to social workers would stop her. I thought the presence of police stopping to check on her would stop her, and nothing seemed to stop her. So finally we gave her 5 months to stop on her own with other avenues, and then we finally decided to do the cease and desist, which it will cost money to hire a lawyer if this goes forward, which I'm sure it will. But we've already spent over $2,000 on privacy panels to block her out. She just moves her light to a different part of the yard. We put certain things in our yard to block her junk structures, and she just moves them around constantly. So we've honestly tried every route we can, and I think this is just another avenue to stop her until 2022, when it maybe goes into the court with a criminal charge. But even at the hearing that I went to, she was told that she would, if she didn't stop, it would be criminal charges, and she hasn't stopped. So she's been warned, and she has 5 citations, and nothing seems to stop her. So this is just another outlet. We're trying to stop her to have quality of life back in our own house.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Director Stark.
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. So Support Services Manager Jennifer Anderson just wanted me to pass along that the city prosecutor has stated that they are trying to expedite this, and that it's possible this would be heard by the end of the year. And then I just also want to note, you know, the IUP itself and the merits of of extending the fence, we have not considered that at all. We haven't seen an IUP application, and it wouldn't be until that happened that I would be able to talk about whether the extending the fence is appropriate, not appropriate. This is very specific to the fee.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
I am curious about, I assume there was some consultation with staff that led them to an IUP versus asking for a variance. Did staff advise them that this would have better odds of approval or something?
Yes, Madam Mayor and council members, we didn't feel like it met the criteria of a variance. The uniqueness has to be about the physical property, not about the occupants, to qualify for a variance.
Okay, and just out of curiosity, had they ignored you and applied for variance, is the fee the same or about the same, or?
I don't know off the top of my head. My gut feeling is about the same.
Okay. So just to finish with, to say where I'm at, since Councilmember Seppel did, the whole point of these processes of IUPs and variances is that everything is unique, and like in the case of a land use variance, it has to be unique to that property. It has to be not created by the property owner, which in this case is somebody's behavior, and we still require a variance because they still consume staff time. And it isn't, the circumstances are totally unfair and outrageous, and I'm really sympathetic, but right now, I think I'm more on the side of when you consume a service from the city that has a fee associated with it, that fee should generally be met. And as Councilmember Troutman said, unfortunately, these aren't completely unique, although this is really an extreme circumstance. So I right now lean towards not granting the waiver.
Councilmember Troutman.
I just had a question for Staff Director Stark. Are you concerned at all about our inability to capture future revenues if this sets a precedent, or is there enough liberty, or could we say that in extraordinary circumstances where our city attorney has made findings of abusive behavior that we may, in our bespoke judgment, waive a fee here?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, thank you. The loss of revenue from a budgetary standpoint, I guess I'm not that concerned about if this were to come up once a year or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's just the issue that the costs have been incurred and will continue to be incurred. And so
I'm sorry.
Costs have been incurred and will continue to be incurred. And without the fee, those costs really are then spread to all the other residents rather than being borne by for the exact situation. And as you'd mentioned, we deal with neighbor disputes frequently. It does seem to be occurring more frequently. And so we just wanted to seek, if a waiver was granted, a waiver that was specific enough that just doesn't open it up to say, well, if there's a neighbor dispute and it lasts for more than X months, then we're going to be granting this something more unique to the situation.
Okay, thank you.
But again, this is 99% policy and 1% technical stuff, and so it is really, I think, very discretionary for the folks at the dais.
Councilmember Whalen.
I guess I'm still stuck on this piece of, I don't know where I'm landing, but I'm leaning toward not granting the waiver just because I don't know what that criteria would be. I'm less like the argument of like we don't want to set a precedent doesn't feel like it holds water to me. I mean, saying yes or no, and yes for whatever reason, like whatever we do sets a precedent in the same way that previous decisions about this set a precedent. But I am curious for other council members, like what the reasoning would be and like what precedent are we okay setting? Because to the point that Director Stark and Councilmember Troutman have made, I've talked to at least 3 different situations over the past month or two where neighbors have been at disputes of various kinds for several months, and that two of them specifically were about noise or about parking, and situations where, so anyway, I don't need to go into the detail there, but just that I'm not sure, I'm open to, if someone has an idea of what the criteria would be, I'm open to setting a precedent that, like, there are extreme circumstances that we would waive application fees, but I don't know what that would be. So I'm curious if others have thoughts.
Councilmember Supple.
I guess to answer your question, I am thinking the fact that there have been several citations and it's been going on for almost 6 months, and there have been police citations, that makes it different than a lot of, I don't know if there's been a lot of police citations in other disputes that have been going on. And staff can correct me if I'm wrong.
City Manager Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor. I did talk to staff about this a bit, and please correct me if I'm wrong. But one, I do want to make clear, we are asked to reduce or waive fees a lot. We have not, because we have not had any findings to do so, and so this is an extraordinary thing to bring this even to you. And also, neighbor disputes do last for an extensive time sometimes. It's unfortunate. We're doing all we can in this circumstance. Staff feel urgency in this situation, but we do not feel that this course of action is the best one to help.
Councilmember Troutman.
I think I would say that if we were to establish a precedent or some factors, I think public safety is one concern, and then I think financial need, and I'm not sure how we would demonstrate financial need, would be potentially another, but given that I'm very sympathetic, and if there is financial need, the fees for a harassment restraining order can be waived in the courts, and there's a form online that you can fill out, and I'd even be willing to meet with you after and explain how to do that. You wouldn't necessarily need a lawyer, and that's, I think, maybe something good for all of our community members to be aware of. So I think that's just my thought. If we were to move in that direction, a way that we could establish it, but I think as it's written now, I'm sympathetic. I wouldn't waive the fee, but I think that still gives you an opportunity. If you wanted to pursue this, you could do it. Am I understanding it correctly? You could do it, but you would just pay the fee that you would normally pay. Is that correct? The residents can pay the fee and submit the application?
Yes, absolutely. The application for the for the interim use permit.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll just jump in here. So I know Councilmember Supple talked about police being involved. When I'm recalling, we all get a lot of calls with neighbor disputes. I don't know, and maybe Jennifer Anderson can help in confirming this or not. I think that's not uncommon that the police is involved in the neighbor disputes. So in terms of a special circumstance, I don't know I'd feel like that's a special circumstance. Is that correct?
Thank you. I think particularly over this past year, with the number of situations that we've seen, it's not been uncommon for police to be called. People are working from home, they're home all the time, they see what their neighbors are doing. So I think this year has been somewhat extraordinary that way. This specific circumstance, the police have been out to this property several times. More so, I think, than I can only think of one other property that has the amount of police calls.
Thank you. And so I guess saying, citing police involvement, I think it would have to possibly be more I don't know if there can be more detail to that police involvement, but there are calls to police with neighbor disputes. And so I don't know if there's a way to articulate the level of police calls. And then the other, there's the question about waiving the fee, but then there's also the issue that is not getting addressed, successfully. And that is a huge concern. So am I understanding correct that the next process in terms of getting the issue actually addressed is, a restraining order in the process they just took, and that could take many, many more months still?
The next process for the city to take, because our violation notices have gone unanswered, we've given our communication with the residents, the photos that she sent in, our history of calls to our prosecuting attorney for his consideration to take this person into court for further action. And so originally, in conversations with him, due to COVID and the backlog within the courts, it was
Right.
Thought that this wouldn't be heard until 2022. In a recent conversation today, there was some discussion about this possibly being expedited due to the severity of what's been happening.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of the circumstance of financial need, I know that that's also an issue that has come before us too, of waiving different fees for financial need. And if that would be something to consider, I feel like that would be something that I'd feel more comfortable taking on as a policy. Like if we do have residents where there is financial need, there would be, we would have a policy, but doing it on a one by one each time, I just know that is an issue that also, happens somewhat. It's not unheard of. Let's see, I was going to ask something else. I can't think of it, but I'll remember it and jump back in. Councilmember Whalen?
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to make the same point you did, and we'll just echo that the two specific cases I know of neighbor disputes do involve one or multiple people repeatedly calling the police on each other, and so I think in one case there are repeated, or at least some citations around parking that I don't think in most places would rise to the level of someone calling the police every day. So anyway, I don't know that is a good indicator, but I am wondering, it seems fairly unique that the city is currently prosecuting a case toward one of the people involved. And in this, it's an interim use permit. It's a temporary thing in a temporary time while a case is being worked out. That is not just the police have been involved or there's a citation, but that it's I don't know if serious enough is or blatant enough. I don't know what the right adjective is, but that it's enough that the city is prosecuting a case, but that there is a timeline involved in that. Would that be, and I'm not even sure I'm using the correct legal terms for how to describe that, but would that be a unique enough situation that would warrant this kind of interim use permit without a fee?
Well, I would defer some of the legal opinions to the city attorney, but I would think in your findings, I wouldn't think you would make them general. I think you'd make them specific to this situation. And the more specificity that you could provide, the less precedential it would become.
Right. I agree with Director Stark. I think that the fact that there's an active prosecution it could be a specific, something with enough specificity, and it's objective. It doesn't leave it open to interpretation, so that if that's that's a finding that the council wanted to make as far as what's the criterion that could be used, that could be one as long as it's specific enough.
Thank you. Councilmember Troutman.
Could I appreciate Councilmember Whalen's observation, and could we establish both where the city has assessed that prosecution is warranted and because of the pandemic, and where the speed of prosecution is delayed, that creates a context where there's a path forward, but it requires a fee, but because of the pandemic, because of the delayed prosecution, we would waive the fee in that circumstance. That probably doesn't come up too often, hopefully.
Right, and Councilmember Troutman, I agree. I think the more specific you can be, the better. And so I agree with you. Hopefully, we're not going to have another pandemic for a while, so that could narrow the circumstances down even more.
I would suggest that those would be the basis then to waive the fee, and I'd support that motion. I'm not sure how to make that motion though. Attorney Tejan, maybe you could help us.
Mayor and Councilmember Troutman, I think the motion could simply be to approve the request for a waiver of the application fees, including conditions as stated by the council as part of your discussion. And I think that we've been taking some notes here. So if Director Stark would like any more information, we can certainly take that now.
Well, I would maybe like to add either in the motion or the findings that, we say in the staff report that we would return to you on September 28th with a resolution for your consideration. Given the amount of time that the neighbors have been dealing with this, I'd rather not make them wait a month to turn in their interim use permit. And so I think we could say, I think in the motion that staff would be directed to accept an application for an interim use permit contingent on findings adopted at a later date to waive the fee.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
I'm just wondering if somebody who's in favor of waiving the fee could sort of just in plain language, I'm just thinking of other requests that we've had that have gone before us. I'm just as an example, there was a neighbor whose house was oriented a weird way. They lived next to a park. People walking to the park were very disruptive. They applied for a variance to increase the height of their fence next to where this disruption was happening. They were granted the variance. I assume they paid the fee because there was no application fee. So I guess I'm left wondering, in that case, the behavior was less malicious, but they were still having an issue with disruption and enjoyment of their property. Why is it fair that they paid $500 and this person shouldn't? I mean, they're still experiencing an issue they're trying to resolve with a land use solution. And to me, it's obviously, I think we all agree this is a really severe situation, but it seems like the severeness of it has to do with the malice, which just doesn't seem like something related to a fee for a land use application. So that's just where I'm at, and if anybody wants to take that on into what, not in terms of giving up the findings, because I think we have great ideas for that, but just in plain language, why does the person with the fence, why ought they pay the fee, but this person shouldn't?
Councilmember Troutman.
Sure, I'll give it a shot, and I'll admit I'm on the fence, so to speak, but I think Councilmember Whalen has persuaded me that in this circumstance, there's a public safety concern, it's active, and it's to the point where there's a criminal, our staff has assessed that criminal charge might be appropriate, but there's a timing issue, and it's a delay, and it's not a delay due to the citizen, but it's delayed to the general challenges of the speed of government right now, and I appreciate particularly Director Stark's consideration, even in this circumstance, to expedite this decision so it doesn't, as everybody learn, there are processes that take time, and I appreciate the thought of even circumventing this so we don't have to wait into October to get this this permit applied. So I would say that that would distinguish it from other circumstances, both public safety and our present inability to move timely on the city side.
Okay. My only hesitation is that it seems like a good argument for why they should get the IUP, but I don't see the fee association quite as well.
Sure, but I think the fee is that there could be a criminal remedy, but we can't move quickly on the
Okay.
criminal remedy.
Okay. If that's a consensus, I'm fine with. Obviously, I would like them to not have to pay. It does feel a little bit unfair to some of the applicants who have paid so far. But if there's a general consensus to support this, I'm certainly fine with that.
Councilmember Whalen.
My plain language explanation would be that in the situation you described, and obviously there's many situations where it's been asked for and considered on some level or not. But the situation you described, at least, is an ongoing situation that is just like they're next to a park and they don't. And so to me, this is a need that only exists because of a delay that is happening on the city's side of things, or on the many systems side of things. It's a solution that is only going to be, hopefully, for the duration of that delay until the situation is resolved, that it's an interim use and not an ongoing one. To me, that feels unique enough to warrant not further penalizing the people involved with an extra fee for the thing they're. I mean, it is their decision to use this solution or to try this solution in the meantime, but it is a fairly unique timeline situation.
Okay. All right, you got me.
And, there does not have to be consensus either.
I know there doesn't, but this is not something I need to die on the hill of. It is an exceptional situation.
Councilmember Supple.
So I would move that we ask staff to come up with the resolution of the specific findings for us to act on at the September 28th meeting, and in the meantime, to allow the applicants to put in their IUP. Is that clear enough, or do I need to state more?
Contingent on the ultimate adoption of the waiver on September 28th.
All right, contingent on the ultimate adoption of the waiver on September 28th.
I would second that.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Troutman. Any additional comments or questions from council? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, the item passes. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming. The next item goes to Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 9 is a consideration or to consider a resolution to approve the change in deed in accordance with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Land and Water Conservation Fund grant for Augsburg Park. And Augsburg Adventure Playground at Augsburg Park will be added to the official park deed with Hennepin County Register of Titles. The park parcel has the following restrictions in accordance with the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources Lake and Water Conservation Fund grant, namely that all grant proceeds are used for park improvements, which is the inclusive playground, and all lands are included in that are included in the grant must remain solely for public outdoor recreation use, and the deed will be recorded with the Hennepin County and permanently managed for public outdoor recreation use. And any other use must get written approval from the state of Minnesota, Acting Commissioner of Natural Resources, and the Secretary of the Interior. And the final grant report is due September 30th. That includes the change in deed. At that time, the grant funds will be released. So given that, is there anything I assume there's not anything for staff to add. I don't see any staff here, so I would move that we approve the resolution to the updated park deed, so the updated park deed can be filed with the county and all grant requirements are met, so funds can be awarded.
Second.
Okay, the motion has been made by Councilmember Troutman and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. Questions? And Councilmember Supple.
I had a question, and I know staff was going to look into it. This says you can't make any changes to outdoor uses. Does that mean we can't go outside the footprint of the current community center? If we wanted to fix up the community center and expand it a little, would that be prohibited or would that be allowed?
Mayor and Councilmember Supple, I did reach out to the DNR when I was alerted to that question, and I actually got a response just this afternoon with not a lot of information, but the way it was explained to me is that it sort of depends on the how much of an expansion, what the impact is to the property. If it goes, and I don't know the criteria for that, but if there's a significant enough impact, it could be what's labeled a conversion of the property, and then it would have to go to the National Park Service for approval. Now, again, I don't know the parameters on how much of an expansion would be that kind of an impact that would require that kind of approval. But I would note that this is an existing building, so obviously some improvements could be made without having an impact to the outdoor recreation area.
So if there was a significant enough change, there is a process, though, that we could go through to go with the National Park Service, so we're not completely cut off.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
So, yeah, I was also curious on that question, but just to clarify then, are you saying that a small addition to adding an elevator or whatever, that increased the footprint, that wouldn't require the process at all, or just that it's likely to be approved through that process?
Councilmember, my understanding is that only if it were to, like interior improvements, that kind of thing would not impact the park property. So it wouldn't need any kind of approval.
And what about parking lots? If one of the parking lots had to get expanded, would that also be removal of outdoor recreation space?
You know, I don't know that I know the answer to that.
Okay.
I think that again, the way it was explained to me is that if it has an impact on the outdoor recreation use, and it depends on to what level it impacts the outdoor recreation use, and if it goes far enough, then there is a process that the city could follow to get approval for that.
Okay. I mean, honestly, it makes me nervous to have this old building in poor condition that we've heard desire to make changes to, and to be kind of locked into any changes that would increase its footprint, which seems likely. I realize that this $200,000 grant hinges on us accepting this, but that seems like a big condition that I'm pretty uncomfortable with, and seems like it's likely to, hopefully they would be receptive through this process, but we're kind of at their mercy.
Councilmember Troutman.
Yeah, I would second Councilmember O'Leary's concern and appreciate Councilmember Supple's prescient observation, which unfortunately just asks questions and doesn't give us strong clarity. And I have visions of Leslie Knope and Parks and Rec scenarios here in my mind, if I'm being honest, which are probably improbable, but like Councilmember Hayford O'Leary pointed out, it's an older building, and I would hate to put a future project in jeopardy if it say we rebuilt and it was 3 stories tall or 4 stories tall, as opposed to, at a future date, would that require the signature of the Secretary of the Interior in any context? It's just that it's hard for me to calculate that the likelihood or the risk. And I'm just curious, are there any critical timing issues? I'm sure we want the money sooner rather than later, but is there any immediate harm if we got more clarity?
Well, the mayor, council member, and maybe there's a representative here from Parks, but my understanding is the final grant report is due on the 30th. So there is one more council meeting before that date. I don't know if there's any time that we need to build into that, or if trying to get more information before the next meeting is an option or not, but I'll let Chris Wybe maybe speak to that.
Yeah, that's correct. So this is due by September 30th, so that would hinder us getting that grant money, which is important.
Oh, sorry, Councilmember Whalen.
I hear this, and I think it's a good question. I'm glad you brought it up. And it does say permanently, and obviously, like, there's a whole bunch of things we can't anticipate. But in the near future, we have no plans for that. We don't have the $200,000 elsewhere. We don't have the tens of millions of dollars it would take to build a new community center on that site. I don't know that, given the other recreation infrastructure needs we have, that is likely to be happening in the next 10 years even. Obviously, permanently lasts a lot longer than 10 years, but to me, it seems that if I don't know, maybe I'm being naive about this working out in the future if it needs to, but it seems like a fairly straightforward decision to me that this is our worry about this impacts whether or not we get $200,000 right now that we've already spent on a park that exists and people love, or a playground that exists and people love. And so I'll stop there.
Mayor, if I could.
Go ahead, City Attorney Tejan.
Mayor and Council, I think the overall intent here for this use restriction is it impacts the park. And I think that, again, while I can't speak with absolute 100% certainty on this, I do believe that this use restriction, the purpose of it is to prevent the park from being converted into something other than outdoor recreation space. So, I believe that any improvements to an existing building on a park property, again, can I say 100% sure? No, but I do believe that that is unlikely to affect the city's ability to make improvements to an existing building on a park property, which is there for outdoor recreation. So, I don't know the city's timeline with a project like that, but I can also, certainly try to get more information. But with the critical deadline here, I think that it's important that the council make a decision.
So I have a question. So if we approve this now, I can't imagine staff, was not thinking about that or didn't think through that, given the age of our community center. Could we grant access and staff could find, do additional research? And if we find something like this will really severely hinder our ability, I don't see as staff or council that we would want to do that necessarily. That's not in the best interest of the community. And also, we have a deadline here, so I don't know if that's possible or not, because regardless, the research has to be done. If we find something pretty serious that says, whoa, this is really going to affect the future of our community center that's super old, it could come back then on the 28th or anything, right?
Great. Mayor, Council, one thought I have, and I'll let Mr. Wybe kick me under the table here if he needs to, but the council could approve this, and then we can do some additional research, and if we really had significant concerns about this impacting a project in the future, we could rescind it, we could not record it, we could backtrack if we needed to, but at least we would get the approval tonight.
Yeah.
And then we could do some more research with the DNR and the on some of the questions that you've raised.
Okay, I'd be comfortable with that. Councilmember Supple.
If you were doing the research, is it possible, you know, like sometimes we subdivide things to say that just that portion of the park that the grant is applying to would be under this permanent restriction? And do something like that instead of doing the whole broad park? Because that was my first question. I read through it like 4 times to figure out, are they just talking about the playground structure or are they talking about the whole park? And it turned out that you were talking about the whole park, but if there was some way we could say that we just want to restrict that particular area, is that something we could look into?
Councilmember Supple, I think we could. I think that could trigger additional survey work, and because we would need to have a legal description for just the park area. Although I think that's the underlying intent here, which I'd like to be able to confirm. But that might be theoretically possible, but it would probably require a lot of additional survey and legal work to come up with that legal description, which we may not have time to do. But I still think it's an option to approve it. We can do the additional research, and if there were significant issues, staff could bring it back, and you could rescind your approval, and the use restriction would not get recorded if there were real big issues with it. But I don't think that's going to be the result.
All right, other questions?
Mayor.
Oh, go ahead, City Manager.
You could, in your recommended action, put that contingency into the motion.
Okay.
And just, given that it's due on the 30th, is there a reason why we couldn't table it until the 28th? I mean, I don't know what the turnaround is from the council meeting to the submission of this.
How
You know,
long does
Director
it-
Markle isn't here, and she's the one that's going to be doing all of this work, and she's on vacation. So my preference is that you would approve it with the contingency as laid out by Attorney Teachin. But if you feel more comfortable tabling it to the 28th, we will try and make that work.
I suspect the problem is that you need time to go through the bureaucracy at the Hennepin County to file a change of deed. So you'd have to leave enough time ahead of time for them to go through the county process.
I guess I wasn't clear that it was like it had to be in the system versus just like approved to go in the system. I don't know. Well, I guess if we are going to give direction contingent on something, could we be more specific about what the concern is, which would be how much of an issue is it for us to expand the community center?
And I think, sorry, if I
Go
may,
ahead. Go ahead.
in addition to that, Councilmember Supple's desire to narrow the legal description, and I don't know if that would require additional plating, but I think that would be, clarity on that would be really helpful.
And Councilmember Troutman, I just don't know, given the timeline, whether there's time to have a new survey done, come up with a new legal description, or if that's even possible.
Yeah.
I think it's highly unlikely that could be accomplished in the next couple of weeks. I think the safest course of action is to approve, and then we can do the additional research and report back to the council if there are any significant concerns about a project with the community center that would be in jeopardy because of this.
Thank you, Councilmember Supple.
I guess I don't want to lose the $200,000. And as Councilmember Whalen pointed out, everything else is kind of hypothetical and probably won't happen for quite some time, but it would be helpful to do the research.
Okay, so would someone like to make a motion? Go ahead, Councilmember Whalen.
I've already stated where I'm at on how much of a priority I see this as. Would staff be able to even just guess at like what, if we are asking you to do this additional research, is this like a couple hours for one person to do, or like just waiting to hear back from someone, or is this like a major thing to look into and research? And I'm just conscious of the fact that I know there is a lot happening, and I may be overruled from where other council members are at, but if this is a major project, I'm not sure it's a priority to be giving to staff on a short timeline.
Mayor, Councilmember Whalen, I think it would be something that I would look into, that I would follow up with the DNR representative who responded to my email late this afternoon, and I didn't have a chance to follow up with her to ask some more questions about the process. And so I think it would really be just a little bit more of my time to do that, and I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you. I'm more comfortable with that, and thank you for the clarity.
Councilmember Troutman.
So I think I made the motion. I'm happy to amend it, and then if anybody wants to add to it, I would move that we adopt the attached resolution establishing the 2020 preliminary property tax levy and proposed date.
Wrong one.
Oh, I'm in the wrong. Sorry. It was originally number 10, and it moved to number 9. That was wrong. I'm sorry, folks. I approve the I would move that we approve the resolution so the updated park deed can be filed with the county and all grant requirements are met so funds can be awarded, with the caveat that Attorney Tejan will conduct additional research to get clarity with regards to the risk of being unable to further build or improve on the park land as a whole.
Is there a second?
Does that capture Councilmember Supple's concerns?
Yes, I'll second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Troutman and seconded by Councilmember Supple. Additional questions or comments from council members?
I'm glad to see the condition added. I'm going to be voting no on this, though. This feels too risky to something that we know is a need, although it is unfunded. I think this is, unfortunately, although our staff did a great job getting funding together for this, I worry that that previous scarcity is going to lead us into a negative situation in the future. So I'll be voting no, but it is better than the original recommended action.
Thank you. Additional comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Okay, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item goes to Councilmember Supple.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This item is consideration of the 2021 revised 2022 proposed budget resolutions, adopting the 2022 preliminary property tax levy, setting truth and taxation hearing dates, authorizing budget revisions, authorizing revision of the 2021 budget of various departments and city fees for 2022. On August 24th, 2021, a special city council meeting was held for the purpose of presenting and discussing the 2021 revised 2022 proposed budget and 2022 preliminary property tax levy. At this meeting, staff presented to the City Council a preliminary gross tax levy of $25,127,419, which includes a levy for general fund operations of $20,067,061, a debt service levy of $3,668,535, an equipment and technology levy of $835,000, and an economic development agency levy of $556,823. Accordingly, the 2022 preliminary gross levy represents a 4.98% increase of the 2021 gross levy. As council is aware, once the preliminary levy is approved, it may be further reduced at a later city council meeting, but it legally cannot be increased over the preliminary approved amount. In addition, the city must certify its proposed property tax levy for payable years 2022 to the county auditor and set its truth in taxation public meeting on or before the September 30th of 2021. The Truth in Taxation public meeting must be held between November 25th and December 28th, 2021, and must occur at 6 p.m. or later. The city's Truth in Taxation public meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, November 30th, 2021 at 6 p.m. Is there any additional information that you would like to add, City Manager Rodriguez?
Thank you, Councilmember Supple. I just want to say that the communication staff is working on more information for residents around the budget. And for those that want to learn more about it, the presentation that was made, it's very long, at the August 24th work session is online. So I highly recommend that. I am, of course, available for any questions if residents call. And I do want to thank all the directors, our finance staff, our IT staff for putting the budget together. It's a big process every year. And I want to thank the directors and council for the good discussion that we had on August 24th, and council for the questions and the guidance that we gave, and our previous work session.
I would like to echo the thanks to all those staff and the directors and everyone that put all the information together, and I do think it was a very robust discussion. With that, I'll move to adopt the attached resolutions establishing the 2022 preliminary property tax levy and proposed truth in taxation hearing, authorizing budget revisions, authorizing revision of the 2021 budget of various departments, and authorizing the city fees for 2022.
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. I know we as a staff and council have talked about this, but just anytime we're discussing the budget, I think it's really important. We always repeat the numbers over and over again, but there's a story there. And so just want to lift up some of the things that we, our taxes are what we invest in, that a budget's a moral document, and there's a much bigger story here than just numbers. And so want to lift up a few things that this will make possible in the coming year. As always, much of the a lot of the budget itself, but also of the increase, is to continue supporting our staff. Our staff are where most of our services come as a city, that they make pretty much everything we do happen. And so supporting them is obviously a huge investment year after year, and it is well worth it. Other things happening this year behind these numbers: several software systems updates, IT, audio, visual, lots of things that have not been updated for years, if not decades, that desperately need that, and it's exciting to be able to make those updates. Continuing to pay off our infrastructure debt, which is exciting because that means we get to use the infrastructure while we're paying for it. But that obviously that continues to add to it. And then as well as continuing to work on our equity plan, putting some budgeting behind that. So there's much more details there, but just want to encourage us anytime we're talking about the budget to keep telling the story about what it makes possible.
Thank you, Councilmember Whalen. Other comments? Okay, and I just wanted to thank staff as well. I know this year in this budget and this tax levy just was really hard, and I know staff took a lot of time and went back and forth on looking through all the numbers and trying to find ways to bring that levy down. This past year has been really tough on our city, hard on our residents, and obviously looking at levy increases is a difficult thing to do given all of that. So I just want to thank our staff. I think this is a really great preliminary levy for us to be at, and I know that took a lot of hard work. So a huge thanks to our staff. All right, the motions have been made. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, the item passes. The next item is with Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is to consider a resolution approving the 2021 revised and 2022 budget for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. On May 26, 2020, the city established an Affordable Housing Trust Fund to support the preservation and creation of affordable housing in Richfield. Through its trust fund, the city can support the rehab and preservation of existing affordable housing, promote development of additional affordable housing, and assist individuals with rental and down payment assistance. The city's HRA, Housing and Redevelopment Authority, administers the trust fund on behalf of the city. The revised 2021 trust fund budget includes funding for the following programs: $125,000 in HRA capital funds and federal grant revenue for emergency rental assistance, serving households earning up to 50% of area median income. $170,000 in community development block grant funds and HRA levy funds for the first-time homebuyer program, which serves households earning up to 80% of AMI. And then $80,000 in community development block grant funds for the new home program, which also serves households earning up to 80% AMI. The proposed 2022 budget for the trust fund includes funding for the programs, $110,000 in community development block grant funds and HRA levy for the first-time homebuyer program, and $80,000 again in CDBG funds for the new home program. Does staff have anything further to add?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. A few things. One is we would like to maximize the amount of money going into the trust fund. Not all of the HRA funds can. They have very specific statutory uses. But the reason we want to put as much money through the Housing Trust Fund as we can, or one of them anyway, is that the state of Minnesota has talked about matching a community's trust fund. They haven't exactly, put any detail to that, how that would work. So we're trying to maximize it for that reason. Another reason is we would like to have kind of a clearinghouse for funding for affordable housing. So it's very easy to track, very easy to look at it year after year. And we would like to see the grand total increase over time. In the consent agenda, you approved something that would allow the city to adopt, I don't remember the exact wording, but to really recognize the legislation that was passed. There's good and bad news with that legislation. The good news is that it allows us to move certain tax increment into this housing trust fund. So next year, I would anticipate we would see that occurring. The bad news is that the legislation was feverishly being amended really up until the last hour. And one of the additions of the word housing, we fear now, takes away a lot of the usefulness. It says that we may transfer tax increment accumulated for housing development purposes into our housing trust fund. How that's being interpreted at the legislature is that it would only be monies generated by housing TIF districts and not by redevelopment TIF districts. The bulk of the money we were trying to get into our housing fund was from a redevelopment TIF district. We're going to continue to research this, but I just wanted to make you aware that that's something we're working through. If you would have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Okay.
Then I would make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving the 2021 revised budget and 2022 budget for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Second.
Any other questions, Councilmember Supple?
Well, it's not really a question, it's more of a comment, but thank you for all the work that has been done to move this through the legislature. And hopefully we'll be able to use it in the way we originally thought it was intended. But if we have to go back and tweak it, I would be in support of that, just to keep persistently going for what we're trying to get as much flexibility as we can in that Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
Thank you, and I'll just add, this is super exciting. I just having this flexibility and the support is huge. So thank you to our staff for all the work on this. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to add my voice to how appreciative I am of your work, all your staff, and I know this is particular interest to you, Director Stark. And as housing prices continue to rise in ways that benefit homeowners, and we're grateful for that, just recognizing what a burden it is for renters in our community is really important, and that this is a system that makes that gap bigger. And this doesn't fix it, but I appreciate every effort to narrow that gap and create new opportunities for people to become homeowners if that's something that they choose. So thank you.
Other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
opposed? Oh, the motion passes. The next item goes to Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
This item is to consider a first reading of the ordinance amending City Code subsection 130513 related to snow removal and snow emergency parking restrictions, and to schedule a second reading for September 28th, 2021. So we got some good background here. Richfield is known for its excellent snow removal and ongoing upkeep of streets. However, current snow emergency parking restrictions and parking availability may place undue burden on residents in high-density areas of the city, which can lead to parking citations and potentially towing of vehicles. In an effort to reduce the number of snow emergencies and ticket and tow occurrences, the proposed ordinance amendment will change the threshold at which a snow emergency is automatically in effect from 2 inches to 4 inches. This ordinance changes one part of a winter parking pilot program that will be implemented over the 2021-2022 winter season. The pilot program will be evaluated annually. And they've added some additional information, impact on service delivery. Public Works believes that changing the snow emergency threshold from 2 inches to 4 inches will have little to no effect on the department's ability to clear snow in a thorough and timely fashion. This change will have no operational effect on the department's snow plowing routine because the department will continue to plow any amount of measurable snow. Public Works will still encourage residents to remove their cars from the street following any snowfall, and expects most residents to voluntarily comply because they are accustomed to the old snow emergency policy. Public Works does expect to spend more time the day following a snow event cleaning up snowbirds with this new threshold, but snowbird and other miscellaneous cleanup is already part of the snow removal routine. Any issues identified with the routine clearing of snow will be noted and reviewed as part of the annual evaluation of this pilot program. And then just to note, when I make the motion, there was a concern I raised about this being in conflict with the refuge areas, so they've provided some language that I'll include when I make the motion. But first off, I'm very excited about this change and staff's work on it. And second, does staff have anything to say about it?
We're not going to plow at 2 inches or 4 inches. It's going to be the same as we've always plowed in the past. The 1 inch snowfall, you'll see our plows out on the street.
Yeah, that was definitely a misunderstanding, but it's really just when cars get ticketed. It's not what snowplows do. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. I guess I'll just make the motion and then we can discuss that. So, let me bring up.
Councilmember Hayford O'Leary?
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful too to clarify that we did add to the language. And we'll have that for the second reading. So the language was clarified, and we added a sentence that reads, "Parking during a snow emergency is allowed pursuant to any emergency procedures or policies approved by the city manager under subdivision 2 of this subsection." So we are proposing that we add that to the proposed language.
Okay. And that's what I would have to say that in my motion, right? Because the language in the packet is the original.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So I by motion approve the first reading of an ordinance amending city subject section 130513 related to snow removal and snow emergency parking restrictions, with the addition of the language that the city manager just read off, which is at the end of subdivision 1, it would be added, parking during a snow emergency is allowed pursuant to any emergency procedures or policies approved by the city manager under subdivision 2 of this subsection, and to schedule a second reading for September 28th, 2021.
I'll second.
The motion has been made by Councilmember Hayford O'Leary and seconded by Councilmember Whalen. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Supple.
I just wanted to note that there was a great deal of discussion about this on the community page, but one thing that everyone was in consensus is that Public Works does a fabulous job of clearing the streets, and nobody wanted that to be messed up. That was what the big debate was on. So kudos to all the people that do the snow clearing.
Thank you, Councilmember Supple. And I'll just echo the huge thanks to our Public Works Department, everybody in the department. Our community loves the work that our Public Works community members do. Many of our Public Works employees are Richfield community members. And so just want to pass on the accolades and the gratitude to our tremendous Public Works staff on behalf of the council, but also clearly on behalf of the community as well. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
First off, I do like Councilmember Supple's framing that they've set the bar so high that people are just nervous that anything won't meet the Richfield standard. But I did have one question, and it actually came up quite a bit in that discussion. People saying that this wasn't necessarily the real problem was snow emergencies being called with not enough notice or at random times. And I know that's a question I raised during the work session as well. I understand if that's not written into ordinance. Is that something informally that you can target of trying to hit a standard start time or something that residents have adequate notice?
Yes, Councilmember Hayford Leary, I get that question quite a bit, and I guess the answer to that is, I guess I look at my job. It's not we're not clearing snow. We're trying to preserve our assets and preserve our streets as long as possible. The best way to do that in the winter is by getting all the snow and ice off as soon as possible. We're so successful now because of our because we can adjust that time. I do understand that makes it a lot easier for residents if we would just set a time, but it snows at all different times too. So to maintain those assets, we want to remain flexible with our start time.
Okay. Is there a standard amount of notice that is given, or is it?
Before a snow emergency is declared or announced, we try as best we can to get it out before 6 p.m. the day before. That's what we try to do our hardest. Most times we hit that, sometimes we don't. There is a little flexibility that we have when I speak with police when we're going to start actually ticketing and towing also. Okay. It gets really, really gray. We try to stick to the ordinance as much as possible, but also give a little bit of flexibility.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that.
Other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The item passes. Thank you. The next item is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to give a COVID report, and I had been more brief in my reports before, and I asked Support Services Manager Jennifer Anderson to prepare the report tonight, so I have lots of data to share. Since the last regular council meeting of August 10th, there have been 231 new COVID-19 cases in Richfield. The case totals for Bloomington are 10,237, in Edina 5,034, and Richfield cases 4,324. The case rates of 5 to 11-year-olds continue to rise in all three cities. Increases in vaccination rates continue to be very modest in BIPOC communities. I had talked before that the disparities had been closing very slowly. Overall, Richfield is at a 79% fully vaccinated rate for 12 plus. I had been giving you the rate for folks that had gotten at least one shot, and Support Services Manager Anderson believes that it's best to give the fully vaccinated, so I'll give that going forward. Completed vaccine series in Richfield residents by race. And these are not always recorded, the race statistics, so they're a little bit lower. So it's more the disparities to look at. White is 73%, Asian 70%, Hispanic 69%, Black 46%. So the largest disparities between Black and white residents. Statewide, COVID hospitalizations in Minnesota today are now higher than the April 2021 peak when there were 699 COVID hospitalizations. The majority of these are unvaccinated individuals. There's still a lot of discussion on whether boosters are necessary. More guidance and information is coming from the federal government. We're also waiting for guidance on the federal government vaccine testing mandate that was recently announced. Bloomington Public Health is planning weekly meetings with the 3 cities, and that'll be scheduled through the end of November, and will include public health leadership, human resources, and city attorney. And Manager Anderson is still here. If you have questions, or I can try and answer questions too.
Questions from council members? None.
And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you so much for the city manager's report. The next item is claims and payroll. Who would like to do claims and payroll?
I'll move claims and payroll.
I'll second.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Councilmember Supple and seconded by Councilmember Troutman. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Claims and payroll has been approved. The last item is hats off to Hometown Hits. Councilmember Whalen.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things today. First off, that it is an odd year, which means we have school board elections. Early voting for that starts this Friday, the 17th. You can come vote early at City Hall all the way up through Election Day on November 2nd. And would encourage you to do your research, get to know the candidates for school board this year. Our work session today, we talked about the organized hauling transition, which is coming up starting October 4th. That whole week, depending on your day, will be the transition day. Depending on the day your trash is typically, or actually the new day your trash will be picked up, sorry. But lots more information will be coming in the mail, so keep an eye out for that. And then the last thing, just want to thank the residents of Woodlawn Terrace, especially the board of the new co-op that is forming there, for inviting the full council and HRA to come tour their community and welcome us in to share their plans to update it, that their co-op will be collectively taking ownership, and it's just an exciting opportunity to provide a different housing option in the city. That's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Supple.
Thank you. First of all, I want to echo something that I said earlier to thank the Public Works staff, because they do a lot of work behind the scenes that all of us reap the benefits of, but we don't see them doing it. And like, as I've been out walking, I've been seeing them doing maintenance and all kinds of things. So I just want to thank them for all the work they're doing behind the scenes, whether it's at the water plant or plowing snow or working on the streets. So thank you to them. The second thing is that I want to talk about an event coming up in the Richfield Public Schools. For the last 3 years, there's been construction going on, and that's drawing to a close. So they are having a parade of schools, so you can go on self-guided tours of the various schools to see the construction that has taken place. And if you go on the Richfield Public Schools website, it'll tell you the exact dates. I can briefly tell you that the high school tour will be Saturday the 25th in conjunction with the homecoming parade. On Monday the 27th, you can go see RDLS, Centennial, or STEM. On the 28th, it's RMS and Sheridan Hills, and the Central Building is going to be on October 1st. So I'm very curious to see all the different buildings, and I hope that all of you would like to join us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hayford O'Leary.
2 items. One that is not on our agenda, which is significant because I thought it was a good process, was the Transportation Commission meeting about 2 weeks ago that I was present for, and I thought went really well. Our staff did a wonderful job presenting the issues around 494 access question, and I thought the commission engaged really respectfully, and it was just a really good, I thought, collaborative outcome or compromise. The other thing I wanted to mention is just, obviously, Penn Fest is coming up. I'm sure Councilmember Troutman will say more about that, but that I will be at the Bike Walk Richfield booth. So come learn about bike safety. We do a bike safety demonstration for kids, just like learning some of the basic things, what the signals mean and so on. And then also, if you just want to talk to me about city stuff, I'm also there for that.
Thank you. Councilmember Troutman.
Thank you, Mayor. We do want to remind everybody that Penn Fest is back. And yes, it's worth clapping. But Penn Fest is back. It's this Sunday. It's 6 o'clock. And I know so many people really wanted to participate in Red, White, and Blue Days. And unfortunately, we have so many, fortunately, we have so many great volunteers that spend all year planning Red, White, and Blue Day that we weren't able to have a proper 4th of July, or at least as much as we normally do. And so this, for everybody that has that pent up, I wanted to get out and be a part of community. Come to Penn Fest this Sunday at 6 o'clock. And we're going to have an opportunity to be together and be a community, and it's going to be fantastic. And so I'll just there may be a couple of items I'm just going to leave on that note. It's a great event. If you've never been to Penn Fest, it's a great opportunity to connect with your neighbors, eat some great food, and learn more about great things that are happening in the city. Oh, 1 o'clock. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember. 1 o'clock, yes.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Troutman. I just have a couple things. We did get the community education, what do you call them? Magazines, the community ed programs, I guess, listing all the awesome programs folks can sign up for the fall and the winter. There's so many classes. So that did go in everybody's mailbox. So check those classes out if you're interested in doing something that's affordable and new here in the community. And then you can also, if you shop at our liquor stores, you're able to donate $1 for every bottle that you buy of a wine called Bonterra. So, and that money will go directly to our Recreation Services Department for a butterfly garden and some landscaping at our new Augsburg Adventure Park. So that is an option from now until September 20th. And then you can also, we are also still doing the roundup and donating for other recreation service programs. So just a couple little things to look forward to if you're out and about doing things in the community. All right. Seeing as we have no other business, I will adjourn our meeting. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.